Okay, I'd like to call the Dover Select Board to order on Tuesday, June 20th at 6:34 p.m. The first order of business is public comments. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say something probably tonight isn't good enough to say it. I'm just gonna say like. If, you know, the board or certain members of the board, they could be more mindful. More respectful of people's time, you know? I think it's a tenet to show up on time. And if you're not gonna be on time, then. You know, then you're late, and it's disrespectful to the people that are here. We can't start, and it's just, and then these things get away, it deteriorates. But if you're a pro, you show up on time. If you're late, there's an outlier, and sometimes you're late and you're juggling work, and I understand all that, but. You know, if you're not here, you're on Zoom, and then at times on Zoom, people are late. And then there's absences, which I'm not gonna get into absences. If you decide you're gonna come, I'm not saying this, but you show up on time. Just be respectful to people that do it. Not hard. I mean, like in my business, I learned a long time ago, like you either, you know, if you're you just say you're like, you know, like just like a half hour early, like that's being on time. You're on time, you're late. If you're late, they say don't effing show up. That's just the business. This is different. This is a different culture, but at the same time, just be respectful to people's time. If you want to sit in the seat, you have to show up. And if the meetings are just doing, you know, we had meetings in June, like employee violations, the things, you know, self-evaluations, wait for that. Public safety interview, wait, I mean, those are key things the public doesn't, I mean, we didn't trust those people. You have to be there. And you get key information from that. And if you're late, and when I see people late for meeting, just the optics, I think, oh, they're organized, they're not ready to go, you know, it's sloppy. And maybe you prepare during the week, but when you walk in late, I think, maybe I'm wrong, okay, then you're not prepared. And it just gets tired out after a while. So maybe tonight is probably not the best night because I'm here, but I'll address it again. But we just need better. Like it's not fair to everyone that shows up on that. And my time is the same as everyone else's. Like no one's time is more fair. And if the job is too much, then don't do it. If you're going to do it, then show up. That's it.
I completely agree with you. Thank you for saying something.
Yeah.
And it will be in the minutes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, and
So you don't necessarily, I mean, certainly you're welcome to say it again, but it will be recorded in the minutes, which they'll have to read in order to vote.
and my last thing would be the minutes are willfully recorded, those are memorialized, and they were approved by the same members that are late. I was just commenting on people that are late. So when those minutes are approved by the board members, then they're in agreement that those times are right. So there's no discrepancy on the times because those are approved. So I would like to see people, if they can, I know everyone's got things to juggle, just be on time. If you can't be on time, go on Zoom. If like if you're gonna be that late, you're gonna miss it, go on Zoom, show on time. And if you're not gonna come to a meeting, and if you decide you can't make it, that's another issue which was discussed back in May of 22. We're talking about being on time, being professional. That's it.
Thank you very much. You're interested in running.
What's up?
Since how the carriage is in running.
Like, is that a question for me?
I'm just saying.
No, I've entrusted people that I voted for to be here on time, so, and we put our trust on you. And when you can execute and you're on time, then that's good enough for me because the job is good enough. But it's the next step to be professional. But if you'd like me to run, sure, I can, you know, but I'd be here every time. You want me to do it, I don't have the skill set, but I'd be here. But that's just part of being a pro. But if you can't do it, there's no shame in it. You say it's too much, I'm juggling home, help, whatever. Like we're all replaceable. That's just the law. But the margins are so thin with budgets and the state education, real, like we need not two people pushing, we need the group. That's what we need.
Thank you. Any other comments? On that or other comments? Okay, moving on to unfinished business. We have some visitors this evening. We're going to talk about the PFAS at the well project and the well projects at the Dovertown Common, particularly with Day Care with Erin Stewart and Stephen Diglio. Hi, Erin. And Steven.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All righty. Yeah, I'm using some technology. It's a little suspect, so I apologize. Anyway, thanks for having me this evening. Here to talk about the update on the Kids in the Country well. The town approved the drilling of the new well, and that happened last December. The results of the well yield test came in at 3.5 gallons per minute. To not do a 36-hour yield test, the results had to be 4.6 gallons per minute, so basically 5 gallons per minute. We submitted a waiver request to try to see if we could avoid the test. That was denied. So the 36-hour well test is something that needs to happen unless the town wants to potentially collect a year's worth of data at flow data at the daycare, which would include daily readings of the water used and the population that day. So you'd have to keep track of how many people come in and out of, the both buildings. And that data would also have to support lowering the maximum daily demand to work within the yield we did get. So we only have been provided a year's worth, or most of a year's worth of monthly data. So it's just the water used over a month. And that seemed to indicate, a lower MDD, but prior data, according to Erin, indicated that it was above the MDD, the maximum daily demand. That's what the MDD stands for. So it may or may not work, and we could just be delaying the project a year. And then I'll let Erin and Ms. Larson get into, I think there's some funding resources if you decide to go forward with the test that may be available to the town. I spoke to a hydrogeologist. His initial indication was the test would probably be around $20,000. So that would be probably in the RFP realm for the town bid process, or I would think. So anyway, that's where we're at now, is kind of see what the next steps are.
So Erin, we obviously have questions, and more may come up during this conversation. So this is a town-owned building that we bought for $1 from the school district. And it's turned into an extremely expensive property to maintain. And now we have a water service. We also have a daycare that we do not charge rent or heat or maintenance on. And it's really becoming difficult for us to maintain that daycare at this point. So we're looking for solutions that aren't going, we may have a bad well and we don't even know it now. And there's concerns that, where does this end? So we've spent $120,000 trying to get them on just the Kids in the Country. This is a substantial amount of money. So we don't know if we're going down a rabbit hole. So could you help us with how we get to providing a clean water source without costing a lot more money?
So yeah, I can speak to the questions that you've supplied to me, and I can talk about the water supply rule and why it's required to do the test. But would it be more beneficial to start with the funding questions?
No, at this point, I think that
because there is some, I believe there might be some funding available to pay for what you've already done. And that's why I invited my supervisor here, Sile Larson, to kind of explain that process. So would it be beneficial to start with that if your concerns are monetary, that this work going forward in part?
They're not just monetary. So if we drill the well that may not be good, we don't know what to do. We have no other option. We may have to.
Okay, so there is treatment is an option.
We looked at some different options that were offered to us, and some of them didn't seem to be a long-term solution. So anyway, why
so
don't you
po-
talk about funding?
So hold on, poets are a long-term option so poets is like a point of entry treatment system. They are an approvable long-term solution. We've put them in a few different schools over the years and a lot of different homes, especially near landfills. But when you get to a system like this, they do tend to have kind of a relatively high annual cost. They can, depending on how quickly you go through the carbon, but typically you have to switch it out annually, and that could be $5,000 to $10,000 a year in additional maintenance, annual maintenance, which is a lot for a water system for just switching out carbon drums. But that's typically what we've been seeing. I can get more detailed costs. It kind of depends on who supplies it. We've been normally going with Culligan. They kind of been the state go-to for the poets, and especially in these smaller systems. But they have to come down, and basically they use a 10 by 54 inch drum full of granular activated carbon that filters out the PFAS, and they just swap them out. And the main reason they swap them out is because fouling can sometimes occur within the carbon over time.
Right, but we don't even know if there's PFAS in this well yet. So
Yeah.
that's the point of the testing. So because the yield is so low on the well, you're required by the water supply rule to do a constant discharge test for 36 hours to prove the long-term yield of the well. So, and part of that test is to test out the aquifer and see what contaminants it draws in so that they can be addressed and that they can go under treatment and they can go under monitoring. So that kind of answers two of the questions I had on the list. I don't know if you have more questions about that, or if you want me to explain it in more detail. If
We have to make sure that we have a long-term
safe yield.
stable water source, and it may pull all the PFAS right to the well, because it's such a draw on the yield of the well.
Well, that's so your maximum day demand. So it tests it at the maximum day demand. It would or whatever Steve proposes. Some people test over it. I haven't got a testing proposal from Steve. So usually you want to test a little bit over so that you have a safe range. And the other thing with this is because the driller's yield is so close to your maximum day demand, you might not have enough yield. So this test is to prove that you have enough yield to support the people on the water system for their maximum use. So that's when the day that they're using everything, or to ensure during a drought that you have enough water, or if there's a huge leak, like someone leaves the hose on by accident, you have enough water. So that's what this test is for. And they do the 36 hours and they extrapolate out. They do math to get to the 180 days, 6-month drought. And they analyze that, and we review that, and we settle on a long-term safe yield for the well. And that's, yeah.
And I just want to add to what Erin is saying. So my name is Celia Larsen. I manage the Engineering and Water Resources program with the DEC. So to what Erin is saying, I hear your concerns about pulling contaminants in from the surrounding area, but really what Erin is just explaining is that if in case there's a leak or there's a drought situation, then that is what you will be doing. So we want to know if that happens now rather than later. So that's really where that test comes in. We'd rather figure out if this is going to be an issue sooner rather than later, because your monitoring schedule, your compliance monitoring schedule won't be all the time. So we want to make sure that we know what you're drinking now as part of this test, rather than on that 3-month schedule or
3 years.
or 3 years
PFAS.
schedule. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is for public health protection that test requirement is there.
So our well readings have been all over the place. Is that a typical situation? We've had ratings as high as 40.3 parts per million, I guess, and 21.7 is the low. All of them are too high for a daycare, I understand, but is that normal to have a very variable reading for PFAS?
I don't think I can speak to the PFAS ratings. I do know that all the water systems have fluctuated over time with these readings. But over 20 is the health maximum contaminant level. So you are remaining above the maximum health contaminant level, not just for babies, but for everybody. So like long-term people that work there, that drink the water their whole lives, that is what we're concerned about.
Right. And the way we do this calculation is a running annual average that takes into consideration the fluctuations. So it's not just one level that determines whether you get above that 20 parts per trillion. It's a calculation so that, for example, there might be dilution occurring due to seasonal changes in the aquifer. So those are sort of the reasons why the levels are, well, toxicity is due to the levels that are due to toxicity levels, but the calculation is to take into those fluctuations into consideration.
And just to piggyback that, we do see readings fluctuate it's pretty common across many different contaminants as well. It's not just PFAS that fluctuates, almost all of them do. And we're kind of looking for a trend in one direction or another, or is it stable more or less? And it's sort of what we're trying to get from the data.
Sarah?
I apologize. I thought I read something somewhere and now I'm flying through my emails and can't find it. There was something that talked about doing like water reduction, like low flow to
Yeah,
reduce.
Steve
the
mentioned
water
that.
demand.
Yep,
How would
Steve
that-
mentioned that. There is a part of the water supply rule where you can do a metered study. So it's daily readings on the flow of the water and also number of people for a whole year. You guys currently aren't drinking water out of your well. So I'm not sure if we could do that for your well. We would have to discuss it because it's not showing actual usage if you're drinking bottled water per se. Like, you're not using the full amount of water you would normally use right now. So that study, I don't know if that would be available. It would be a discussion we would have to have with probably our manager.
Sarah?
So, no, what I was asking, I thought I remembered reading somewhere that one of the ways of addressing it was to install low flow water. So we would be reducing the usage rather, in addition to some other.
Yes, so that's 10%.
I'm apologize because I can't find the document in my file, but.
That's okay.
Is that hallucinating or is that?
No, so there is installation of low flow plumbing fixtures, 3.5 gallon or less flush toilets, 3 gallon per minute or fewer shower heads, and faucet aerators allow for a 10% reduction in design flows. So that doesn't get you low enough.
It doesn't get us far enough.
No, 10% of 2.3 doesn't get you to 1.75. Right.
Yeah,
Or
I
well,
mean,
actually, it's based on the average day demand. So I'm sorry. I apologize. Go ahead, Steve.
yeah, but still, it won't get us there. I mean, the
Right.
10% is not going to get us there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Based on-
So there's another question that was submitted that says, how many other towns in the state have gone through this process? Or I guess school districts, to the extent and the length of time that this one's gone? I mean, is this a commonly occurring situation?
So I can speak to, I guess, two different things. So for PFAS, other schools are going through this process and other water systems as well. There are 16 systems that have exceeded the PFAS MCL in Vermont. Most of them are seeking to install treatment. So far, one system has successfully drilled a well, and it took about 3 years for them to resolve it all. Ultimately, it's like it's based on the water system and how contracts move with drillers and consultants and funding, because most of these systems have sought funding. The other, my toddler's probably coming in, just so you know. The other thing is that like this process for a new source, like all water systems in Vermont are school, municipal, restaurant, campgrounds. If they're a public water supply, they have to go. Thank you for this beautiful rock.
That's mine.
Do you want to say hi? Oh, it's yours. Okay. They all have to go through the source permit process to prove long-term yield, to test their water quality in order to have a source permit and be regulated as and serve water to the public. Does that answer your question?
Thanks, Sarah. So if we were drawing a greater volume, higher gallons per minute from the well, we would not necessarily have to do the 36-hour continuous test?
That's correct. If the driller's yield had been, as Steve said, over 4.6, according to the rule, you would not have to do the test. But
Okay.
because it's not, you have to prove your long-term safe yields.
Okay, Steve, is there any reason to think that drilling the well deeper would give us that gallonage?
It's 700 feet deep. I don't know if you can really practically go much deeper.
And it was fracked.
I'm asking.
And it was fracked. Yeah, I mean, Cushing and Sons, I think, did everything they could to try to get you the 5 gallons per minute that we were trying to get.
Okay.
Yes, Scott, so obviously this is not the first time you guys have seen all this. Are there any other creative solutions out there? Like, is there any like,
Well, we have to follow the water supply rule. It's in the Vermont statute. So I'm not sure. Well, I mean, deepening and hydrofracking is often how people get more yields, but you've already tried that.
So talk to us about funding.
Okay.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to the funding side of things. So as part of meeting with you all tonight, Erin and I reached out to the Water Investment Division with DEC, managing all the funds for state revolving loan fund projects. And so there is currently money available for emerging contaminants, and PFAS qualifies as an emerging contaminant. And I believe I was CC'd on an email from Amy from the Water Investment Division to, I think, Jeanette, you were on the, maybe Jeanette is one of, I assume one of you is Jeanette, is on that email. So basically what Amy is laying out is the process for applying for that funding. So it's a process that you, the town and Steve will work on together, basically to submit an ESA is the first thing, engineering services agreement. So that's a contract that then needs to get reviewed by the state and approved, and then basically a loan application for this funding. And there is the opportunity to get funding retroactively for some of the work you've already done. So I would really say at this point, it's a matter of working with Steve to sort of get some of those documents ready, and then submitting them to Amy with the drinking water SRF program. And I can also provide Amy's, well, Jeanette, you already have Amy's email information, so you can reach out directly to her and get that process started. But it's basically 100% forgivable loan for these emerging contaminants.
There, so is the contamination an issue only for drinking water, or is it for hand washing? Food, like what are the things where if we did nothing about it and it was there, we could keep using water for.
If you decided to do nothing, it would be a do not drink for as long as you're still using that source. Yeah.
If we had, you know, water station, you know, these bottled water things. We could still use it for toilets, we could still use it for hand washing, we could still use it for cooking.
Yeah, well, not for cooking and not for
Okay.
anything consumptive. So you can wash your hands, you can use the toilet, but nothing consumptive. And there's even, you know, you probably don't want to use it for gardening, either for watering your garden and stuff like that. So everything that could end up as a consumptive use, you wouldn't want to use that water. And I would have to get back to you on this, but I believe that the state would not approve you to be on a do not drink forever. I think that would lead to violations, and that the state would want you to seek a solution to that, to the PFAS contamination.
Well, we want to find a solution. We're not gonna say that, yeah. So.
Just
back
to,
to you, Steve.
I was going to say, just to kind of provide a reminder, one of the reasons we went with the new well was the old well had some defects in it, had a really high chloride concentration as well as the PFAS, and had a terrible yield. That was only like 1 gallon per minute. So there was like with or without the contamination, the existing well that we're currently drawing from had issues and was worth replacing. We're just hoping this gets you out of the chloride and the PFAS. If the PFAS gets drawn in, which you know, it could, then we'd be looking at a poet, but at least we'd still have a source that has a higher yield and a more protected well.
And we could end with the new
If
well.
that ends- Oh, sorry.
That worst case scenario, right?
Yeah, worst case scenario is well, hoping the chloride's not an issue with the new well, that there be a poet in addition to the new well. So you'd be getting essentially a treatment system one way or another, but at least now we should have, you know, 3 gallon per minute yield, which is triple what you have. And hopefully the chloride is the reason your water there tastes terrible or did in the past. I mean, it's really high. So, I mean, the people haven't been drinking that water for decades, I believe, anyway. So,
And if so, hopefully this pump test will show that there's enough water and there's not any PFAS in it. You know, that's the best case scenario. If it does end up showing that there's PFAS in the water, again, it also has to show that there's enough water. But let's assume that there's enough water, and then it does end up showing some PFAS in it. Then, as Steve said, there's the solution of treatment. Again, there's funding available for that too. You can seek out this 100% forgivable loan for installing treatment. The issue with treatment is obviously that there will be some ongoing maintenance, operation and maintenance of that treatment, and that doesn't have any funding associated with it. So I just want to put that out there, that that's sort of the downside with treatment, which is why looking for new source is a good idea if it works out. Yeah.
There.
So you had said some of what we've already spent could be recouped through this loan. Like we spent 100,000, 120,000. Is there, what's the limitation of how much of that already spent money we can get back? Is it by service or is it by volume, by dollar amount?
I can't answer that question. That is a question for Amy with the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund program. But in that email, she did indicate that there are some expenses that can be covered. What that is and how much, I don't know, unfortunately.
Anybody have any other questions? Anybody in the public?
Um,
And
If you're looking at, if that's the worst case scenario, I don't know what the well driller would charge to go down another 100 feet, but I'm in the neighborhood and went down 800 feet to get what I needed. And it happened. Just maybe worth a call, just a thought.
They're the ones who said they thought they should stop, if I recall, right? And I mean, we know.
Well, yeah, I thought it was that when they did the drilling down to.
They had
5 or 550, that it wasn't enough, and so they cracked, and then they got us over that number, so they didn't go any further.
And I could talk. I got a pretty good relationship with Bart. I'll call him and get back to you on his thoughts on that. And I could provide an email or a letter through Jeanette, kind of just stating what his thoughts on going any deeper.
Thank you.
And my comment to that would be, Steve, it may be worth just like looking at wells nearby, looking at their depth and their average yield, just as like that might give you a sense of what is available in the area. I know that USDA is using a tool to do that, to sort of understand what they might find if they drill 700, 800, 900 feet down.
So is that like a web-based tool that the USDA has? Because I've actually seen this one yet. I've only been using the natural resource atlas and kind of clicking on the various wells around.
Yeah. I mean, it's using the atlas data. I don't know if it's publicly available. Erin, do you remember?
I don't know if it's public available either.
Yeah.
I don't
Is
remember.
that something you guys could potentially look into to see if you have it available on the government side?
Well, it's not through our group, but I could send you the contact of who it is
Okay.
through the NRCS.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they wanted to be, I think the intention was for it to be publicly available. So I think they would be interested in sharing. So we can
Okay.
definitely connect you. Yeah.
Thank you.
So Steve's gonna contact Cushing. We're gonna try to put together something for some funding, a grant application or a revolving loan application. And we'll have to, and I don't think we're in a position tonight to make any decisions besides getting more information from Cushing and looking at what we can possibly do with the loan application. But thank you. You clarified a lot of things, Sarah.
I just wanted to say, you were talking about possibly having public source information about the depth of neighboring wells. So that, I was just.
Well,
Okay. All right.
I think we're good. So, but we thank you all for attending. We really appreciate it. And we want to come up with a solution, and so that we can drink the water in the building. And we appreciate it. Taking time out of your evening.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks
Nice
very
day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes, he's done now.
Okay. Moving on. Discuss the involvement partnership, our involvement with SOVTA. So the last meeting, we went through a lot of the timeline, and I appreciate that, Andy, very much. That was very kind of brought it all together for everybody. Tommy can't attend tonight. Tommy Oakley, who's the representative for SOVTA. But I think we're at a point where I'm not sure what they could say that would clarify anything or make our decision about where we go any different than what we're gonna have this conversation. So Andy sent out an email, which is a public document. One, yeah, maybe another reset about dealing, working with studies yet. I frankly am not prepared to continue working in this manner. Promises are made, goals are put out there. information is supposed to be shared, it just isn't happening. And I know that it would be nice to say that we would work with them. But I feel like we're banging our heads against the wall, and they probably do too, so. I know, I'm frankly ready to. Move in another direction, that's my opinion. I put this right out front, so I'm looking for everybody else's. Opinion, and, I. Will do what the board decides.
Stop, so, a quick question, do we know, like, in terms of maintenance for Horace Hill and everything, that's gonna be up there? Who is going to be doing that, or do we have any idea who's gonna do that, is SOVTA? Potentially, could they be playing a role over there?
We have not discussed, sorry, Vicky, may I respond?
No, yeah, absolutely.
We had not discussed that with them. There's a line item in our budget for maintenance of trails. Obviously, we're not gonna spend all of that money on Horace Hill without plans to take care of them. That being said, there's a growing group of interested people, volunteers, who are very interested in participating in trails days, whether they be with SOVTA or not. So we would be organizing trail days to take care of some of those things. If it's something that a volunteer group or organization couldn't take care of, then we would be, seeking that help elsewhere, and that would go out to bid anyway. That's not a scenario where we would be paying them to maintain the trails without a permit. So it's not, it's something that we've prepared for in the event that, this is something we would talk about.
I guess the part that the hope would be, a volunteer organization, maybe some. Volunteer help over there, and whatever, maybe it's paying them, but we have a group in our backyard. And he was willing to, restart and try, I know I'm for. Trying to follow like the outlines kind of put forth by Andy and try and keep a relationship with them.
Eric, I'm just. I'm trying to envision, or I'm trying to like wrap my head around all this and say, what actual relationship are we in right now? Because Forest Hill, the trail maintenance is, nothing's been determined, right? Nothing's conclusively said that they are or are not doing it. So we're not in a relationship at Forest Hill with them. What is the current standing with the Dovertown Forest?
Do you want me to answer that?
that question, Andy.
So, up until now, SOVTA has been maintaining town forest. Basically, I want to say 5 years ago, SOVTA came, asked the Conservation Commission, can we cut some ski glades in the town forest? We said yes, sounds like a great idea, cut one and let's see how it goes. And it grew into what it is today, which is fantastic and awesome, and they've maintained it. So basically, they have put up trail markers, right, with the little SOVTA thing on it. They basically created all of the backcountry skiing in the town forest, and promoted on their website. They got a little bit in the AMC's guide to backcountry skiing in the Northeast. It's fairly popular. You can see 10 cars up there in the winter on a regular basis. And they have maintained it. Last year, they wanted you to sign a landowner agreement contract, which those discussions fell apart. And so Eric and I had talked about maintaining it. They said they would come in and do it. It was a back and forth thing. What I emailed you is basically a plan that would try and take our partnership back to when it was successful, when the town was in charge of the town forest. And so SOVTA came in as an outside group and asked permission to do things, asked permission when they maintained. The structure of who was in charge was very clear. The guardrails were very clear, and it was great. We had a great relationship. once we got into projects where it was unclear who was in charge, say the Ridge Trail, Horace Hill to some extent a year or so ago. And there was a good deal of money on the table. The relationship went downhill. When it was clearly defined what was going on, and there were a volunteer trails group doing wonderful things in the town forest, it worked well. My idea was, rather than you folks divorcing yourselves from, or the town from that relationship, which may involve them pulling signs or trail markers, which I know they don't want to do. But if they did do that, that would be, hard to recover from. And of course, we'd have to go out and replace them. In recognition of the fact there's good people over there doing good things. They created some wonderful things for the town. I think that there is a way forward that won't necessarily wind up in us butting heads. If we take it back to where the roles are clearly defined and the town is clearly in charge of town-owned properties. I've talked to Tommy, he's open to that, but of course it requires you saying yes or no tonight before you can get into it.
But Tommy is one member, and one board member. I asked the last meeting if we could have a meeting of the boards, the SOVTA board and the Dover select board. And he said that he would be the only one who'd show up. So who are we, yeah, Tom seems reasonable, but who are we really talking to?
So on their website, they list some board members. The ones I remember are Tommy is now president. I didn't realize that, but he's the president. So Tommy, I remember Tim Dolan and Chelsea Samani, good friends, good people. And did I see Mike Porter? Who else do we know? They're on the website. There's at least 4 or 5 on the website. All good people. Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that you guys can't get together with their board. But I think if we reduce the relationship back to the level it was when it was successful, that won't necessarily matter. And when I say the relationship, Sarah's question about the town forest, I think that's relatively easy to do. Horace Hill is a little more complicated. They want to be in on the design build, more or less, is my understanding, in order to consider being involved in the maintenance afterward. And you guys might feel that that level of cooperation is beyond us at this point. In which case, no is a perfectly good answer, and Eric hires people and they maintain it. And maybe in the future, SOVTA wants to have a trail day or something, who knows there? I don't know. But I just felt like these are people, they're members of our community whom we serve. And regardless of how difficult and strained the relationship got, I think, as the power dynamic is, we have all the control over town properties. You do, I should say. We owe it to them to risk some more heartache and pain if there's a way forward. And if there isn't, it'll become clear pretty quickly, and then it's done. But I think this could, get us back on track. Maybe.
Joe, are you there? Joe? Eric, do you want to say anything?
I think, I read Andy's email and I agree with much of what was said. I think, there is, if there is a route forward, I think that is what it looks like. Myself, Tommy, I think inherited some ideas that precede us in all of this. But trails and recreation has been a big conversation in this town for a long time. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of players and a lot of different moving parts. And I think Tommy and I were me being hired here and him joining the organization, it put us kind of in that spot to be dealing with those things with each other. It's obvious, there's been some misunderstandings through our public meetings, through letters that now sit on my own personal record here at the town, and thoughts about, my correspondences or my actions here, and that's then disheartening as a part of this relationship, I think. Just because I know that my intentions have always been good and of a nature to do great things for the town. My only thought is that if we are to move forward with a plan where, you know, we continue to work with them, we need some very strict guidelines as to what that looks like, right? Because right now, the scenario we're in or found ourselves in is that grants were being applied for and it wasn't clear who would be getting the money. You know, and that's, I don't believe there was nefarious intent. However, it needs to be clear that that's town money being facilitated for town projects on town property, right? Jurisdictional opinions were submitted on behalf of the town, but not, you know, with our name secondary on them, so that should we ever need to do anything with those in the future, it's almost as though we need permission to do so. You know, to the point where when we reopened Horace Hill, you know, we submitted new jurisdictional opinions. That was a step that we wouldn't have had to take had we not, you know, had that miscommunication to begin. I just, for the sake of time and energy and, you know, personal health, I need there to be a very defined set of guidelines as to what that relationship looks like. And if those guidelines are overstepped, that relationship needs to end. And I don't, you know, to Andy's point, it's unfortunate because they have done some really amazing things on our properties and I'm beyond appreciative of the things that they have done. But if continuing the relationship looks like this, it's not productive. And it ultimately is only hurting the people who we were intending to help in the first place, and that's our user groups at the end. So if we're taking extra months to get RFPs out because there's discussion about who owns a map or who does this or who does that, all we're doing is delaying the projects, right? If there's, you know, we live in a small town, you know, I hear things all around town about my project that I, you know, had no idea about, you know, despite working on them pretty much daily. So I think if the relationship is going to continue, it needs to be clearly defined. We need to know who's, you know, who manages the project, who leads and who follows, basically. And when it comes to town properties, it's the town. You know, and I think that needs to be first and foremost. If a situation arises where we find it necessary to use someone else, whether it be for maintenance or design or build, that needs to be okay within that relationship, right? Our association with their volunteer group cannot deter us from properly getting something done or going outside for maintenance, should we need to, or any of those things. Like I said, the guidelines are paramount. Without them, we're going to be having the same conversation very short. Those are my tips.
Hello, Vicky.
Oh, thank you, Joe.
Well, I couldn't unmute quick enough. Sorry. Then you went to Eric.
So what are your thoughts? Joe? Joe, can you hear me? Oh, I mean, we're talking basically about three problems, you know, you're talking about Forest Hill, Town Forest, and Ridge. Generally.
Those are the ones I considered in my email, yes.
So the Ridge project is really SOVTA and National Forest as the primary relationship, and we're kind of being.
So what I would suggest is SOVTA and the National Forest are in charge of trails on National Forest land. And basically the National Forest Service made that decision. That's it. You know, they said we could have input in quarterly meetings and so forth. I'm not sure that's going to be productive moving forward, but it might be. But we have to decide, hey, that's them. We're not going to jump on them for X, Y, Z. You know, They took the winter off, okay. It'll get done. They're good people doing good things done, right? And they leave the parking on town controlled land between us and the National Forest Service. Horace Hill, like I said, there's a little bit more of a question mark. Perhaps they can say, hey, it's not ideal that we're not in on the design build, but we can maintain it. You've hired, the premier trail builder in the state. They're designing it well. We'd like to be in on the maintenance, part of the maintenance. We'd like to have a trail day, I don't know what that looks like. Town forest, what I would personally love to see is them to continue doing exactly what they have been there. And that works well. When they meet with the Conservation Commission once a year, explain what they're doing, we say yes, and everybody's happy. Everybody loves it. It's been a good relationship that way. Put a pile of money on the table, and it doesn't matter who the personalities are involved. The chances are somebody's going to butt heads with somebody. And that's what happened. These projects got big. We didn't know who's in charge of what. And we're not talking about giving them a few $1,000s for their time, which we've done in the past. We're talking about real money at that point, and it makes things difficult, and we're not ready for that. I don't think.
So. Does it make sense then to ask them to come to us with a written proposal for what they are envisioning at Town Forest and a separate one at Horace Hill? And then we go over that and we agree or disagree on aspects of it and come with a written agreement, 2 separate written agreements for those 2 projects.
I think that could evolve year to year too.
But that would be.
And let's stop Horace Hill right now being
No,
developed.
they need to come to us and say, here's what we want to do. We're independent and it's our land and we can do whatever we want until we agree on that document. And I'm not saying that we do that and hold everything, put everything on hold until that document is written and signed. I'm saying, if you say to SOVTA, if you want to be a part of Horace Hill, we need a written document that outlines what your expectations are or what you're offering to the town. In the meantime, we are going forward with the project. We're going forward with the design build. We're going forward with, with what we have contracted for with other organizations.
If I were you, what I would suggest that the town forest is coming up with a landowner permission form, which they've told you their insurance company requires. What they provided you was a contract that was based on the fact that, hey, we're going to get a $20,000 grant and we're going to come to the town forest and spend that money, our money, in the town forest. Therefore, we need these controls over the town property to protect our investment. Is basically the justification for the control that they wanted within that document. Your lawyer told you not to sign it. What I'm saying is don't accept grants or money from SOVTA. We spend economic development money on town projects and remain in control of them. Then the landowner permission form becomes a very basic thing. VAST has them, they're one-page document, a private landowner would sign it. And that way, should their insurance company ever say, hey, somebody got hurt, did you have permission to be doing what you were doing out there? And you have this basic thing signed by the select board that says, yes, they had permission, but it doesn't say they get to close trails, or in order for the town to do XYZ, they need to run that by SOVTA, or there's none of that. It's just simply a permission form for an insurance company. At the town forest. At Horace Hill, honestly, I don't know. Unfortunately, I think you would need to talk to them about what would be possible, but that's, you and Eric probably should, I wouldn't offer an opinion.
So what I'm saying then is, you would, if they came back with that document, we go through with a red pen and it's like, these things are not going to be part of the equation. We will agree to X, Y, and Z, like you said, a basic landowner agreement.
document after that, the land.
Okay. And then-
Because otherwise we're gonna be right back to the agreement that we spent a lot of legal money on.
Yes.
Having our attorney say, don't sign this, you know? So, but if we put the document forward, it's our document, it's their decision to sign it.
Right.
And Eric,
In this case, I will repeat, there needs to be very clearly defined scenarios where the relationship is terminated, should there be an infraction. Because us being right back in the same spot 6 months from now, having this conversation, we're not gonna get it. You know what I mean? And that's the frustrating part. Is I think, like I said, they want great things, we want great things, if we can all move in that direction, that's amazing. But the idea that like either one of us could or would get in the way of the other or have, you know, the ability to stall a project, that's not what's in the best interest of this, of any of these projects.
okay, Joe, your last chance to weigh in on this.
Can you hold on 1 second, please? Yes, I do want to weigh in.
Yes.
Still not working? I'm gonna go get a new headset. So I would just like to say that what Andy said would probably be a good recommendation for it to work. So, gotta find, I don't think yeah, I'm here. I'm here, you here?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay. So I will go with Andy's recommendation and do as he said, moving forward with them on the on that recommendation. Thank you.
So when we come back here, we're back here again, we need to not come back, this needs to work. There's so much energy, it's been so much emotion that's been put out there, we need to make it work. And I hope they sincerely want to work with us still, I don't know, I mean, we only have one person we can even talk to, it's Tommy, the rest of them aren't, you know, he's not the whole board. They haven't voted or decided. So I'd be willing to try it, but I'm with Eric, if they go off the guardrails again, we have to, do something more serious. You good with that?
Yeah, I hope they're still willing to, you know, want to work with us as well and done things in the over for us.
They're gonna have clearly defined roles and that may not be something that as a board they want to.
Could be.
So. Okay. All right. So I guess we need some kind of motion at this point to move forward with defining roles in town, on town properties and creating labor agreements. There's a VTN that we created.
I make a motion that we do exactly what you just said.
Thanks so much for that.
Anything else?
So just to define it, we make a motion that a landowner that we, the board or Erin prepares a landowner agreement to submit to SOVTA for work in the town forest.
And then if one is needed for Horace, we'll go forward with that. We don't have. And we will know exactly what we're doing. I think that that landowner agreement needs to be run by your attorneys.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
What?
Aye.
Didn't hear it. Yeah, no. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Moving on to new business, discussion with resident Janet Rivers regarding response to the Stewart application. Hello, you're Janet.
I'm
Hi.
Janet. Hi, everybody. I prepared something to stay efficient in time, so I'm gonna read from my phone.
Sure.
Okay. My name is Janet Rivers, and I'm here to introduce myself and my husband, who's at home, Andy Hall Summers. To everybody who doesn't know us, and to clarify our intentions as permanent residents of Dover. I was hurt and disparaged by the article featured recently in the Deerfield Valley News that addressed my business's application for funds from the 23-24 Dover Do It program. I found the publication of this article in the Deerfield Valley News to be a blatant and unnecessary attack on my reputation as a member of this community and owner of 2 local small businesses. At this time, my application, personal name, and both business names have been slandered in these board meetings and the Deerfield Valley News. I have had multiple residents and customers come into my shop and question me about the article since its publication, and I feel that this is the appropriate forum to address the board's concerns that I read myself in the article. I was not present to respond at the time of the meeting, and I really appreciate you guys letting me speak today. My husband and I bought our farm and have lived in Dover only 5 years, since 2018. This is our forever home that we will pass down to our kids. I am a botanist with 2 active Dover businesses, and Andy is a semi-retired engineer who operates 1 active Dover business. I have recently joined the board of the Dover Historical Society, and I intend on playing an active role in local events like the Blueberry Festival and more for years to come. Our daughter is at Dover Elementary, as was our son. In the fall of 2020, after years of walking past the empty unit of the post office building in East Dover, I made a deal with the owners of the building and opened Dover the Moon General Store. We found out we were surrounded by many talented artists and crafters that could benefit from a brick and mortar space. So I filed permits, I got my tax ID and my EIN, and I started stocking the space with locally made goods. I keep all consignment fees as low as possible to give the local artists, the most proceeds from their sales. I also make sure to advertise and support their home studios and other local shops where their goods are featured and sold. In a very natural and organic way, Dover the Moon has evolved into a vibrant community space and a gift shop where all are welcome and many now gather regularly. I am able to keep the store stocked with affordable and curated gifts, and the neighbors have come to appreciate Dover the Moon as a reliable place to find something for anyone. I seek out artists. I have paid out thousands to local makers since we've opened, and I've also bridged multiple local artists directly to new business relationships. In addition to the coffee stand in my shop raising over $750 in donations for the Vermont Food Bank since we have opened, the shop has also held community fundraisers that have benefited the Deerfield Valley Food Pantry, the East Dover Volunteer Fire Department, the Dover Free Library, local individual residents in need, and more. The shop has also gladly and proudly donated goods to multiple area silent auctions and to the Dover School. In 2022, I was approached by the Economic Development Director, Erin, who came into our store and encouraged both Andy and I to apply for the Dover Do It grant. I would like to advise the board that prior to that visit, I did not know about the Do It grant. After reading the requirements, the benefits, and the specifications of how the Do It grant works, I figured we could make it happen. As a habitat restoration biologist, I am an experienced and successful grant proposal writer, as well versed in compiling information and writing scientific research papers that are submitted to peer-reviewed journals for publication. I understand through extensive experience that abiding by the criteria for funding requests, both federally and within every state, is the key component of most successful awards. Last year, our 22-23 application was approved for funding to repair and paint the portion of the building that is visible from the road, replace rotted posts, mend and paint repairable posts, re-cement the pitted front stairs and crumbling divots in the cement walkway, fix the wood walkway portions and paint non-slip grip paint on these portions, and to fix, weld, and repaint and seal the handrails. Seeking the best bang for the town's buck, I called local painters, carpenters, and welders that we knew for estimates. After reviewing the numbers and looking through their available schedules, I hired my husband's company, Paul's Painting and Wallpaper. Thanks to the generosity of my husband, he fit in the work and hired locally for help in between his paying gigs. I was able to maximize the funds by only paying for locally sourced materials and saving on labor costs by paying his helpers rather than him. No affordable other local contractors for these jobs were available during the months we needed this work done. I had no plans to add to my or my husband's already heavy workload to paint and fix up the exterior of a building I did not own. But with the grant, we were able to do so at our out-of-pocket costs. Dover the Moon has received $3,560 for the submitted $4,747 worth of work done. A balance of $939 of our approved funds from last year is left for us to finish the last phase of the walkway, which is the exterior plywood sheething and painting it with the non-slip grip paint. We couldn't do it at the end of last year because the weather got too cold too quick and it would have ruined the paint. For our 23-24 application, again, at the encouragement of the economic development personnel, I applied under the same terms and conditions to finish the remaining portions of the facade painting and wood repairs that are visible from the main road, to repair, shore up, and paint posts of the building's street-facing porch that affects the stability of the roof above the walkway used constantly below. I also applied to replant the hillside triangle that is the east entrance into the town of Dover with native perennials that need little maintenance, will only grow to a certain height, and will produce blooms from spring through fall that will support pollinators, beautify the roadside, and welcome visitors and residents alike into Dover. When my application for the 23 Do It grant was denied on June 6th, I accepted the denial and wrote into the Economic Development Office. And thank you for the notice and to inquire what I could do differently for a future submission to be granted, just as my 22 application had been. I received an informative and graceful response from Shannon explaining that going forward, it would be beneficial to list my exact material sources and collaborators rather than the business umbrella quotes I normally give customers. I responded thankfully, and that was that. On June 12th, I was informed that the Deerfield Valley News published an article about the recent select board meeting where my application was discussed publicly. While being discussed, members of this board made remarks stating I misrepresented myself and my business and insinuated I put in bids under another company's name as a sneaky way to take money from the town. This board also stated I had applied for funds for the entire building, including the apartments upstairs. I acted underhandedly and attempted to get paid for sweat equity, which is false, misleading, and harmful to my personal and professional reputation. Because last year's application went fine, I did not think I had to change my bid submission. There is no sweat equity involved because I do not own the property where my store is located. The only part of my business I would have invested in before being invited to apply for the DEER grant was the inside of the shop and the garden out front. As required by the application, I put in bids from local companies used in the project. Because the businesses are connected to me actually reinforces that we are paying local helpers, buying local materials, and helping the local economic impact of the project. Had the guidelines said to itemize each subcontractor and material source, I would have spent the extra time to do so and have done so in my resubmission for the 23-24 Do It program should it reopen. The board must recognize that local resources for the projects at play here are non-existent or unavailable at a reasonable cost and or time frame. If I were to outsource any of Andy's work, it would have cost at least 4 times as much and likely wouldn't have gotten done in a timely fashion. I choose to use the high quality plants from my nursery because I know what plants to use for this project and how to tend to their successful establishment. Because first, that is my expertise. And secondly, because I'm able to supply more plants more affordably than I could afford to get at any other nursery, which there are none of in town. I would have to go out of town to get plants, period. I am disappointed in losing so much time and effort to defending myself over this unnecessary printing of incorrect information and character slurs. It is my wish that the select board recognize the harm to my reputation, both personally and professionally, by their flippant remarks, and I respectfully request an apology. Andy and I asked the board to redact their statements against my application and ask that those redactions be printed in the next issue of the Deerfield Valley News, along with an acknowledgement that I followed all guidelines as put forth by the town and board in my 2023 Do It application. I will gladly speak to any member of the board and the community to answer any further questions with complete transparency at this and all times. Thank you again for letting me speak.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That's it. That's what I'm putting forth to the board.
I would suggest when you have your landlord resubmit your application.
I'm addressing what was said about me. This is not about the application itself. This is what was said about me in the meeting and then printed in the paper. I can deal with the issue of the application, and I've talked with the Economic Development Committee about that. What I'm addressing here tonight is what was said against my character. It was unfounded.
To my knowledge, until this application, and I guess last year's application was. We were not gonna look at. Because we gave you the money, maybe we didn't look hard enough. You're not supposed to be selling. Giving you money to sell stuff to yourself. Our application says no sweat equity, and it's gonna be much tighter now going forward, so that it doesn't. So you brought in maybe a soft spot in the application. And I didn't know until somebody wrote a letter in the newspaper that your husband was the contractor for so.
Again, that was not a secret. It was just part of the application as written, as required by the guidelines you put forth. Again, I understand there's a discrepancy in what you expected and what I did, and I can address that with an application. I'm here about the slur against my character and what I do over there in that shop. I didn't do anything underhanded. I followed the guidelines that were given to me.
I think that the impression came across this way because Green Mountain Hosta does not list you as the owner, which would, so you're hiring yourself. And that was discovered by going into the state website to look for business registrations.
Which is, again, totally.
But that is then sweat equity. You are billing the town for a business you own to get paid for the labor that you would be hiring from yourself.
I would not be paying myself to do that labor. I would be hiring a local resident to help with the plants. I would be providing plants that I have paid for, tended to, and are nowhere available in this state. Like, they're just not. You have to order them from specific nurseries. I'm a habitat restoration biologist. I have connections with people that have these plants. They come to my nursery after I purchase them. They're not free. And then I have to plant all of them. And my plan is to make that space beautiful. There's nothing wrong with what I did. I literally followed the guidelines. I'm asking you to accept and acknowledge that I followed those guidelines, because those were the guidelines that were in place. And that I did not act under any intent of misinforming you. You guys have easily, I mean, we have been in Eastover now, it's been 1.5 years. Every submission that we did, we had to send in pictures before and afters. We had all the information in front of you. Paul's wallpaper's address is right there. None of it was a secret. None of it was underhanded. It's all very obvious. So again, I'm asking for a redaction and I'm asking for an apology.
I would disagree that it was obvious.
Okay.
And if you had the way we read the Green Mountain Hosta invoice that you submitted, there's no way for us to know that your intention was for that labor to be paid to some other person.
And I understand that after
So
I
that
wrote.
is very difficult, we look at that,
Mhm.
there's no one here to say different. And it looks like you're saying, pay me for 21 hours of work.
I understand.
That's how it looks.
I agree.
And that was how the comments came out because of that.
And I agree how that could be read, which is why I immediately, when denied, I asked how I could clarify and make it better, because that's what you do when you get denied a grant. You fix it, you reapply next time.
The comments were made
comments.
in the select board meeting, based on what we were looking at in the meeting at that moment.
Were opinions.
Yes, they were opinions,
Exactly.
but it was with the documentation that we received, it was difficult to understand how to take it another way.
And I would say to that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but
I would say to that, if there's a question about how something is presented, then the response would be, this is unclear. We should address this differently or check on this or deny it right now and she'll just have to answer to it. That's fine. The words that were said against me and my character were unfounded, untrue. I did not apply for apartment fixing. I did not apply for sweat equity because it's not my building. I was just doing whatever I could to make sure that that space was going to be taken care of and I would be hiring locally. That money is spent locally. To me, and by the guidelines, everything was to the board. Everything was laid out. It was fine. To be questioned and denied, also fine. Even the comments as they are shared in the select board, that's another, okay, you guys have those opinions, you said them. I believe the Deerfield Valley News is, it didn't need to print those opinions. Honestly, you didn't need to put both my full name and both business names in the paper without understanding exactly what the process was there. And I feel like it was not thought of properly before letting that information be published in the paper. And I want it to be fixed.
I will just say this, we have no control over what the Deerfield Valley News writes. So if you wish to take it up with the person who wrote the article or with the publisher, that's one matter. But to come to the select board and say, you need to tell a private business that they have to redact a statement in public and issue you an apology is kind of, it's beyond our control to do. We can't tell an entity that they have to do X, Y, or Z. If you have a grievance with them, I'm not even going to speak to whether it's legitimate, illegitimate, whatever, but your grievance, from what you just said, is not with us and what was said in the meeting, it was with how it was reported after.
I'm definitely upset about what was said in the meeting about me. I definitely am. I still want an apology for that. The redaction, whatever means we need to go by to get that done. If my name is published because of what's been said in a manner that is, I mean, it was slanderous. It really was. And it's unfair. And you guys said it. So I want you to redact it. I want you to apologize.
Well, first of all, thank you for supporting local, for repping local artists. That's awesome. I love that you're giving back to the food banks and all of those things. That's awesome, and I appreciate that. And I like how you're locally minded. In fact, I think we all appreciate that. I think if you could also just understand our role when we're receiving this and how it worked to us, we're trying to support and do the best thing we can for all the residents of Dover. So I would hope, because you seem very reasonable and logical. All right, if I'm reading something and it seems like, this person's business is owned by this person, and this person is now applying for this grant, it's just, looking at that, it didn't seem like it was another business, or it just didn't seem like that was to the guidelines that we had. If you had something done before with fall painting, and it was cheaper, I get it's hard to get a contractor out there. Maybe that's something we need to go look at for the guidelines or something, but I think we're just acting with the information we had, and
As I was acting with the information I had and the guidelines I had, and you were acting with the information you had and the guidelines that you put forth, now we're at an understanding. I would like my apology, and I would like a redaction of the statement said against me, acknowledging after we spoke even that you recognize that I did follow the guidelines and that there might have been a misunderstanding by the way things were presented. I don't really mind how you want to word it, except taking responsibility and acknowledging that I am not the bad person put in this newspaper article. That's how I was presented. I have been questioned by people who come to and see me every day and who are thankful to me for the shop. And then all of a sudden they're saying, oh, that was very unflattering, Janet. What does this mean? And then I explained to them about the plants, and I explained to them about Hall's wallpaper doing work. And say, well, this is what we did, and this is what I applied for. And all of them who have witnessed the progress and the work that's been done there are just as confused as I am as to what the conflict of interest really is. We paid a bunch of money. We got reimbursed for the money. That money is on the building. There's paint on the building. It didn't come, it's like Andy spent all of his time in between jobs to do as much as he could, and then he paid helpers that live locally to help him do those things. And I get it, it's not clear. It wasn't clear because of how I wrote the umbrella of my invoice or my quotes, which again has been addressed. And I apologize if it was unclear, and that's why I'm here today. But I still feel that there needs to be responsibility taken because those sentences were harmful to me. And they were said here.
Well, when it gets to the board, it's been through our economic development department. They didn't understand, I don't think that they understood that these businesses were in some way connected to you. And at that point, not over the move, but the other businesses. At that point, we were approving and not approving applications. And this had some really, a lot of questions to it. And so we didn't. And
Which is fine. That's fine. That is not the part.
but these are the
that-
discussions that happen during meetings. And it happens all the time.
Again,
And it's out on YouTube. You can watch the last meeting.
yes, I understand.
So when things happen in meetings, we can't undo them. They're done. And the questions that were asked were valid in the moment. So we can't undo what we did. We can't redact things. We just can't. This is a public body. When we say things, good, bad, ugly, it's what it is. And unfortunately, we're sorry that you feel hurt. I am sorry that you feel hurt, but we can't take it back.
Okay, how about this? Now we're in public. We're all here. You've heard what I've said. And I would like you to redact your statements about me being, no, say it, you can say it now. I understand what you wrote. I understand there was a discrepancy. Our guidelines were not clear. I apologize to you, Janet, for saying these hurtful things against you and your business. That's-
Okay, I'm gonna say this. I don't think the guidelines were unclear. Sweat equity is very clearly listed. That's one of the things we really needed. One of the few things we don't have to fix about the application, because there are things that need to be fixed.
Absolutely.
But when you wrote landscape labor for your own business and did not in any way indicate that that was going to be paid out to someone other than you,
Right.
who is the owner, that
Yes,
was by definition a violation of the application, which said no sweat equity. Because if you had said labor to be paid, outside contractor hired or something of that nature where it was clear that you were not paying yourself for
Yes.
the labor. That was the problem, that was the misunderstanding, and that was the issue.
okay,
And that is why it didn't look kosher. Not just that it was a sweat equity issue, but that it appeared.
okay,
It appeared as though you were using the name of another business you own without attaching your name to that business to
right,
get paid for labor through that business.
gotcha,
Which then looks like you are trying to get paid for sweat equity.
understood.
And that was how this happened.
Okay, and now we're here and we have new minutes and we're on YouTube and you have heard what I've said.
And Vicki, and I will also apologize that your feelings were hurt by this, but we're not gonna apologize for having said what we said, because I just explained why we said it. There was rationale for it at the time.
Okay,
We have new information now.
uh-huh,
We can now say that because we didn't read the application in the manner you intended for us to read it. Because there was an item in there that was unclear.
mhm,
Had we known that, we would have perhaps come to a different conclusion and made different statements in that meeting.
okay,
Okay. We're gonna move on.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I have to go home. Have a very productive meeting.
Take care, Janet.
It's the police department. We're gonna open the cruiser bids.
So we only got one bid.
Oh,
So, I'm gonna ask that you do not,
open it.
no, you can open it. But this is a company that I believe we've always gotten bids before. They always bid below the minimum bid. So you can open it. I would suggest you do not publicly comment on the bid until we, until we decide, because I don't know, they may be open. And it may be all fine and good.
And then, well.
Well, so until. If it's over, it's good, they're in. If they're under the 12, then I think a discussion needs to be made on how we want to proceed. Whether we accept that. I would argue the point that if we, I don't think we should, because I've had comments made to me, well, if it was lower, then maybe I would. So I think that if it's below the bid, then I think we should discuss at that point. But I think at least you at the minimum probably should open it and go from there. You know, I mean, you do what you want. But I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Remind me how long we've had it out for bid?
I believe.
A month.
Yeah.
So this is from a, company from without, in the Midwest. Can I say that?
No, it will.
We have no bids. They qualify.
Okay. So then I'm open for suggestions on how to go forward. We either keep it as is, keep the bid open for another set period of time. We lower the bid. And with that being said, just to give you some rough numbers, without going into detail here, budgeted for a cruiser was $41,000. The new car we paid was $38,869. That left us $2,131. Global Industries, who does our outfitting, takes stuff out. And again, just mind you, Ford changed the design. So a lot of equipment that we had did not go into it like we've done for years. We had to get new equipment. So global to do this was $10,146. So that put us $8,015 over budget for the new cruiser. That does not include $6,000 that's in the trade-in. So if you include the trade-in, say we got 6,000, then we're still at 2,015 over. I'm gonna actually take that back. I'm gonna say roughly another 300 and something, because Global was not able to put on the graphics. They would have to hang on to the cruiser for another couple of weeks. I wanted the cruiser back here, so they lowered their price. And then I took the cruiser to Moore Brothers and they put the graphics on for 300 and something. So that also come out of capital. So that's where I'm at. I'm open for suggestions that you heard from Sergeant Argas back a month or so ago, when he did his research on this bid. Everything was, they were bidding even probably even lower than you got there on cars. So I'm open for suggestions.
Okay.
Remind me how you came up with the minimum bid price?
So the minimum bid, this is a complete inceptor. For the sector, you go to Kelly Blue Book, they do not have inceptors, they list Explorer, which is a model of the Explorer. So I looked at what the trade in. If you trade it in from Kelly Blue Book, it was, I'm just gonna give you rough numbers, 11,400 up to 13,400. If it was a private party that bought it, it was 13,900 up to 16,300. JD Power, which I believe is the old NADA and ABA, they did list for these four inceptors. If you bought it from the dealer, it was about 15,000 up to say 17,000 if you bought it from the dealer. If you traded it to a dealer, it was 11,500 to 12,500. I originally was going to ask the minimum bid of 15 by looking at all these numbers. When I then found out, because then through that, the exhaust pipe, the front exhaust pipe.
Failed.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I was coming up with some more ideas. But anyway, so we needed to replace that. Plus it also needed rear brake backing plates, which are those plates that keep the crap from going into, which are very cheap. So I asked the Kevin Aldridge, our mechanic. I said, I was asking 15, if I brought it to 13, is that a fair price? What needs to be done and repaired? Absolutely. I then decided to just drop it another $300. So that's how I came into this.
Yes, do we have other avenues, places to promote it, to offer it for sale, where you think we might get more exposure and possibly get better bids?
I'm not really sure. I do know back when originally, I think I mentioned in the board meeting that Wyndham County Sheriff's Department bought the other one, and they were gonna buy this, and when I went with the 15,000, they had decided that they weren't gonna buy used, they were not gonna buy new. They, on my behalf, sent it out to all the other sheriff's departments throughout the state, because I asked for their email list, and they did it on my behalf, saying, this is what Dover has, if anybody is interested, and I haven't gotten it, and so.
I think we need to drop it and drop it more than a couple $1,000.
Okay, so with me not knowing what's there, so if we were to drop it, how do you want to drop it? So we kind of like say, more or less break even, so I would then drop it down to ask for a asking price of a minimum of, say, 8.5.
You said you had conversations with people who said that I could meet that minimum bid, but if it was lower, I would. Did any of them mention what they thought they would be willing to pay?
I've had a couple of people say like, someone threw out 6,000, another one just said, I can't pay 12, they didn't come up with it, with a dollar figure. You know, again, just thinking of, you know, where we live, you know, it's out there. We only did advertise in the Deerfield Valley News. It was also on our Facebook, and I believe that's how this company found out. We did not advertise in the former. We could do that as well. I think just because of the cost wise, they ask and we've always had success selling it. So we did.
Yeah, it was just shot in the dark if Kevin Aldrich, or who said is your mechanic, if he thought 13 or whatever was fair, maybe if you threw it out and said, hey, do you think you'd get rid of it for 10? I don't know.
So I think that I like your recommendation for like 8,500. I think that brings it down under the 5-figure mark, pretty substantially. It looks like a good vehicle. It's obviously had tons of maintenance on it. It's high mileage, but it, not super high mileage, but I think if you drop it down, I think we want to try to get rid of it. And not keep advertising if we don't have to, so in that 8 to 9. Somewhere in there. That's my opinion. You guys,
I think that's 85 seats.
85.
I'm gonna take that thing. Just have to do that first.
Yeah. Anything else for us tonight, Randy?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, the highway transfer station. Hi, Travis. Thank you for sitting through this.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
We're going to consider the option to purchase passes at the transfer station. And I know this is something that Joe has been very involved in. And are you there, Joe? Okay, so I don't want to really.
Vicky, I'm here, and I
Okay.
believe Travis can speak on my behalf. Thank you.
Thank you. Travis, can you speak on this now?
Yes, so.
I was approached by Joe and actually more than just Joe. I've had some of the local people ask about how come we don't sell the stickers at the transfer station. And, you know, my answer has always just been, you know, you've been getting them at the town office for a very long time. And that's where they can verify that you're a resident, and that's that. But with the recent inquiries, you know, I don't think it's gonna be that big of a deal if we do, but I do want a little bit of transparency as far as, you know, I don't want the transfer station attendant to have to go in and start looking up the grand list, and like, if he knows you're a resident, you know, we know who comes through there on a daily basis. Our attendants are local people, you know, if he knows, if you know you're local and you can sell them a ticket and we don't have a long line of cars out the door, then yeah, we can do it. But if the dump is really busy, and if there's any question about the attendant not knowing, just I'm not telling, just send them to town office, you know. But for the people that we know for sure that could come and get it there, I've talked with Chris, he seems on board with everything, so.
So I think the problem is, a lot of people do not have dump permits, and they continue to come in, and Chris will say, could you go get your permit, could you go get your, and you just don't, right? And this way, it's like, okay, now you can, because
Yeah.
you're here right here now.
Yeah,
So I also heard from Joe, when we were talking about this, that an easy way would be to say, can I have your mailing address
yeah.
in town?
I mean, generally people can rattle it right off, if they have to think, like,
Yeah. Then maybe I'll go try to.
Or-
Randy.
or, hey, you're gonna pay what the contractor pays, you're gonna pay the contractor rate for your ticket, and so be it. You know, if it means that much to you to save the extra money, then hey, prove it. And by the way, go to the town office, because I don't know. So,
Bill, do you have any opinion?
You know, I think they should continue to go with Andy. You know, you'd have to be asking for their IDs, see how old they are, if they're seniors. I've had guys pull in there and I've asked them for their passes. And I've had guys tell me, you know, I've been coming here 25 years, and never had a pass. I said, I've been here for 40 years and had to get one every year, get a pass. You can't stop your stuff, you can come to the town office and get it.
But that doesn't work on the weekends.
It does not work on the weekends, but when it doesn't work on the weekends, we give them an allowance and they have to pay the $5 a bag.
Andy,
That's what they have to pay.
you must have some.
No sticker, I'm not gonna, especially when we have someone doing the Airbnbs.
Mhm.
Those guys come in, I have to tell them, listen, you don't have a sticker. You should ask whoever you're renting from if they have a ticket or a pass, but you can't, so you have to pay the maximum price that we charge for bags. And nobody usually has a problem with it. So,
Andy,
So it doesn't appear as though this plan would really affect my office at all, except maybe fewer people would come in to buy stickers. I can tell you what I typically do when I sell a sticker is I have a pad of paper. You give me your name, your physical address, because you have to own a property or reside in Dover. Okay, so you can be a renter. We don't have any record of you. If you're not a voter and you're not on the grand list because you don't own property. But I ask for your physical address because you either need to own property, you don't need to live in Dover, but you need to pay taxes or be a resident, a renter. I write down the number of the ticket that I'm selling. I could give them, they're all sequentially numbered. So I could give Chris, Phil 600 through 700 to start or whatever. Write down the number, person's name and the date. And that's it. I sell them the sticker. I don't think we have a big problem with fraud, just because you have to give your name, your physical address. To lie about that, because I can check a number of different, I wouldn't find everybody, but I'd probably find you. If there's a problem, you have a record. If they have the time and they're willing to do it, I don't see a problem with it, but as far as the feasibility of it, Phil and Travis and Chris are the people you want to talk to.
Is Chris aware of this?
Yes,
What's his feeling on it?
when I talked to him, he seemed on board with it, you know, I also brought up the idea of some punch cards at some point. Marco and I were gonna look into them and then present that to you guys at another later date, you know, to see if we can start working in something like that as well. But, yeah, Chris seemed on board with it.
I think the punch cards are actually a brilliant idea, because one, it would tighten up that auditor trail, that the cash at the transfer station is always an issue every time we get audited, which is every 3 years, we get a full audit, and we are always, that's the one thing that they don't like is the cash, and so if you're selling numbered, punch cards, it's gonna be, that will help tighten that, it won't take it all away, but it will help tighten it up.
My biggest thing is try to make it a courtesy for those regulars that we know. You know, they don't have to come down here, they can just get it there and we can do it if we have the time, but I also. The time is a concern, that is a key thing for me, if they're busy, like. I would rather not see them stopping the line of cars that are all the way out our driveway. To sell a dump pass that they can drive down the street on their way by and get. I would rather keep the line moving, keep the flow going and say, hey, I don't have time for this now, but either stop back or go to town office, but. The option is there when the time is there.
Sarah,
My only concern with that is how do you convince someone who's now decided that they should be able to buy their sticker there, that they picked the time that was too busy? I mean, how much are you gonna get argued with? By the guy who pulls in,
yeah,
said, there's only 3 cars behind me, that doesn't count, that shouldn't matter, or 2 of them arrived after I pulled in, you can't hold me. You know what I'm
I
saying?
know
Like,
what you're saying,
if you have a gray area,
yeah,
people are gonna push the envelope, so it just needs to be okay for Phil and Chris to feel like they can say, look, I've said. When I have this many cars in line, you can either wait until they're all gone.
Yeah.
And I'll sell you the sticker then. Or you can go down to the town,
or come back.
come
Next
back,
week.
come back
It's
on
on
a
the
Tuesday,
weekend.
and come back on a Wednesday.
But also, when you have construction material coming in with contractors that you don't know, and they're pulling up. And they bought contract tickets here, what are you punching? What's that punch card? What, punch out their card, and then they just stopped off $250 worth of stuff?
I don't think we're saying that we completely do blue punch cards, but for some people, they don't have like singles and that kind of
For
thing.
residential.
Yeah, so it might be easier for you to spend $30 and I'm up there seeing Chris, I'm gonna spend $30 and get my punch card, and then I have to worry about bringing cash for the next 4 or 5 years.
You're back.
Yeah, so, whatever, so we don't have that yet, but.
And maybe we don't have crunch cards for contractors.
No, you
Right.
can't, it's gonna be impossible,
Yeah, so it'd be just for private.
just for bags.
correct, just for bags, yep.
Any other comments on selling the dump permit? We're not talking really about punch cards tonight, at the transfer station. Does somebody want to, I guess, make a motion that we do this?
I make a motion that we allow the dump attendants to sell dump stickers. Time permitting.
Second.
After
And
the
then,
transfer station.
so there's some fear that Vermont is.
Really? Oh. Joe, you there? Did you want to say something?
I'm here, yes.
Are we, you want to add anything to this conversation?
No.
Definitely seeking shelter. From climate change.
Yeah.
I don't want to make this any longer than it needs to be, but as far as senior cards go. I don't know if that would just add too much aggravation to your life, but if somebody's a senior you sell them the pass, and then there's a card and you write their name on it, the number of the pass, and you sign it and date it. That gives them the ability to throw their bags of garbage to the first two for $1 instead of $3 each. It's up to you whether I give these folks those as well, or whether you just say, hey, I can send you the passes, but I don't have the senior cards. You definitely have to go see Andy, whatever you guys want, just to, so when you're moving forward, you know.
Stickers.
And let's see how the stickers go before we expand our amenities up there. So let's not give these guys like a quarter they have.
Yeah.
So we had a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next, we have these wide-ranging quotes for the roof at the highway garage. Travis, I'm so confused. Thank you.
Oh, I know.
Good night, Andy. Good night.
Good night, thanks, folks.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, they are very wide range and,
And a lot of different options.
oh my gosh, yes. And none of them are really the same. It's the spray foam insulation roof that we have in the rafters attached to the metal roofing. It can be very labor intensive to remove the metal roofing. Some are willing to take a gamble and see if the insulation stays and the metal roofing comes up because it's so old and weathered, they think it might. And others think that if you peel that roof off, you're gonna lose all that insulation too.
So. Does any of this, and so the first one is a new. Does
Yeah,
that include new insulation or no? This is strictly.
this is just the roof. You could,
Okay.
you. There is a potential here for extra cost because of that insulation. Unless you do one of those seal coatings that is listed in that's the only way to avoid any of the insulation repair.
Okay.
Um,
Sarah?
Did any of them tell you what their high estimate for replacing insulation would be? Like assuming that it got damaged and they had to redo all of it, did any of them have an idea?
No, I would just assume at that point, they would leave it upon us to hire another contractor to come in and that does the spray and installation and say, you know, either you're gonna have to do these touch-ups or redo the whole thing. I would hope not, but
What's about the spray? I don't know anything about that.
so they are like. They're a coating system. They come in, they clean the metal off, refasten everything down, all the joints and seams are taped with some special tape, and then the roof is neutralized to remove all the rust with the power washers, and then they seal coat the whole thing. And, you know, I've heard pros and cons on the seal coating thing. I've heard people say it was just a Band-Aid to get them through a 10 or 20 year span, and that in this environment, they just don't last.
That was my question.
I've had others say that, you know, as long as you maintain them correctly, like the last quote in here for the 21,999, if you recoat that, I mean, obviously it's not another recoating for 22,000, it's more like 10 maybe. To recoat it, it'll buy you another extent of time. But, you know, that metal.
Any references or from?
Yes, quite a long list of very large buildings that they had done, but they were all down in like Western Mass area. I was worried that, like I said, that they don't see the extremes that we do.
Not like in the Berkshires, or you're talking like Springfield and that area.
Yeah,
I mean, if they were in the Berkshires, I might go there.
right.
So they don't really have anybody. Have they done anything in Vermont?
I can't answer that.
But you could ask that.
I could ask, yes.
So then talk to us about Bradford Roofing and Walker.
So Brattleboro Roofing and Sheet Metal offered, they also offered a coating system. And then the guy reached out to me and he was thinking that he would offer a full metal replacement because he like Walker and Company thought that that might just, it's so old, it's original to the building. He thinks that he could just peel it all up and that the insulation will stay to the rafters and put new roofing on it and good to go for a good many years. So that's why he gave me a second number for all metal for the whole thing.
And the Walker.
What's the warranty on these metal roofs?
I mean,
Are they 30-year roofs, 50-year roofs?
yeah, somewhere in that range, I'm guessing 30-year. I don't know without looking at what that specific 28 gauge metal roofing, I would say it's pretty standard.
Because the third quote at 22,000, if we spend 10,000 every 10 years, in 50 years, we still want to spend $80,000.
Right, right. So, like with the Walker and Company, he recommended to replace the whole thing. All new metal. And
Where's Walker and Company from?
I think they're from Brattleboro area. Yes, I believe so. Or, yeah,
Well, I mean, we only had 60,000 in the capital budget for the roof.
right.
Have you seen what what is it, apples to apples on the quality of the roofing? Between Brattleboro's all 28 gauge, all metal.
I would say probably. You know. They're both.
Yes.
Walker is owned by Ray Reed.
Yeah, I was gonna say, they're locally owned, it's owned by Ray Reed.
Who's that? Walker? Walker, it's on my radar.
Yep.
Right, and Ken, what's the schedule on?
I did not ask.
We need to ask that.
I did talk to the Adam Queenville company. He was thinking, you know, September-ish, if it wasn't, you know,
You think you need one of these with the summer for rain?
right, yeah, I mean,
So
the others I do not know.
For Walker, I would definitely want to know we would want to have this done before the end of October.
Yes,
Yes,
right, I would like it done like ASAP because,
I know, but you know how this thing
Yeah.
is.
yes,
Sarah,
Well, I'd also ask for Walker and Company for a more detailed description of the material that they're using, the warranty,
okay,
and references
okay, yeah.
to compare them.
Mhm.
And did Brattleboro Roofing give you any references?
Yes, they gave me, I have quite a few on their quotes,
And are they local, like
yes,
Southern Vermont?
oh, yes, very much so,
Mhm.
yeah,
they're, I know they're a pretty reputable company.
yes.
And I'm sure they've got it all included in this quote.
Yes,
Is this removal of the old metal or?
yes, yeah, for the 81,730,
Mhm.
that's removal of the old and installation of all the new.
I guess we can't quite make a decision tonight.
Yeah.
Now, we're not gonna meet for a month,
I know,
but we can have a special meeting.
okay,
So if you get that information, because we only have a meeting that we
Right.
do to expedite it. So
Yeah.
I would say don't stop,
okay,
keep rolling on this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay,
that's what I would say. And if we need to do a special meeting anytime, we can do that, you know.
okay,
I think that's kind of. Yeah, so, yeah, just, I'm not available the whole first week of July, so any other time I can do that. Because we don't have to wait for the third week.
yeah, okay,
So just so that there's clarity, is that we get references from all three of them.
Yeah.
Asking Adam if they have anybody that's further north
Okay.
that they service.
Yeah.
And a more detailed explanation of the, well, Brad, she gave you the one, but the other, a detailed explanation of the material used by Walker.
Yeah.
And if
And
we,
timeframe.
a time frame,
Okay.
and, yeah. So if we committed to something by July 15th,
Early July.
yeah, if, what could they do this year?
Okay, I will find out.
Fair,
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Economic development. Probably an hour behind.
Only.
That's all. So close.
Okay, starting out, so we had. I will reiterate publicly, some very expected permits that we needed to draw for our project on Horace Hill. We resubmitted our PRS, as I stated earlier, said back there are no activities required on the property, however. That spit out, which we knew we were going to need a wetland permit and a stormwater permit. Already received the stormwater permit, took about 3 weeks, really rushed out winter. Wetlands permit, we still will need to acquire. Myself and our trail building company, that Brooke, the head of it, he was out on the property with me. And our local head of wetlands, Rebecca Chalmers, we walked the property, she found issue with 7 acres at the entrance of the property, okay? May not necessarily be wetland, may be hydric soils, but it is, 6 in one, half dozen in the other. So what she recommended is that we reach out to a third-party company who comes in to delineate the wetland for us and help us through the permit process, because that's literally what they do on a daily basis and it's the quickest way to get this done. In the meantime, she's given us the go-ahead to move forward with the piece of project that is west of the road in the middle of the property, which is where the bulk of the work will be done this time. So great news there, we can put shovels in the ground and get the project moving. We do need to have that bottom 7 acres with the entrance trail and a number 2 or 3 of the disc golf holes needs to be delineated for wetland and the permit pulled. That, she said, can absolutely happen by the end of summer if we go with a group to help us do that. So I've been speaking with an organization out of Northern Vermont. They have availability to come in July. They're called Arrowwood. This is what they do. They've quoted me anywhere from $1,700 to $2,000 to come in and delineate the wetland and figure out what it is we're going to be needing to pull for the permit. Now, that doesn't cover the cost of submitting the permit. It allows them to come in and tell us what we need to do for the permit, and then they will quote us the price on top of that. That delineation can be used elsewhere should we not like their price for submitting the permit as well. So what I'm looking for from you guys, just to be on the safe side, is to approve an expenditure of $2,500 for me to hire Arrowwood to come in and get that delineation taken care of so we can get the permit moving forward and move forward with the project this time.
I make a motion that we authorize economic development to spend up to $2,500 to Arrowwood for wetlands consulting on the Horace Hill property.
So. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
The second item, to discuss a potential public meeting on the ARPA funds. Because we hadn't received a response from Amy at the state for many months, we had decided, okay, well, it's time to start talking about maybe using the ARPA funds for this. The fact that email's come in today, and there is new information about us being able to possibly obtain funding to cover some of these things. I'd like to.
Take a big breath.
She's
That's how it-
dying audibly,
So much.
which and also I wanted to mention, I'm absolutely happy to help with any kind of application. To take care of this, but I'd like to delay the conversation on the ARPA funding until we have a clearer idea of what we can get from the state to cover
You
these
should do it
expenses.
this fall, though.
We absolutely should, so we have until 2024
Or,
to expend the money, so we're gonna need to
oh,
figure out.
we can expend it fast.
No, for sure, yeah.
But we need to have a public conversation.
Do fan throughout some employee bonuses, just throwing that out. So, no, so that won't be a problem, but I think we should do our due diligence in terms of this money from the state for the water project before we spend it, and then find out later that we could have received funds to cover that proposed expense. Okay. I'd like to discuss reopening the Do It application. So the last time we were here, you guys approved $53,602.05 worth of Do It projects. We had budgeted $55,000 this year for the Do It program. So that leaves us $1,397.95. There's also the issue of the $12,500 that we put into a paving project budget line item that
And all got pushed there.
kind of hasn't come to fruition yet, so we funded paving projects through Do It. It's of my opinion that we should at least offer, so that gives us a total of $13,897.95. I'd like to reopen the Do It program for 2 weeks to any member who, or any business who had applied or had not, for a total of $15,000 to make it 3 full projects. So we're talking, $1,103 or something more than what's in the budget, but I'd like to open it up for those 3 additional full projects and give people an opportunity to resubmit or submit the first time. Is everyone okay with me doing?
Joe? You're not there. Dan, you okay with that?
I'm with it.
All right.
So we will have that out, and then those applications will come in front of you guys, and probably in the second meeting in July, depending on. Yeah, that's right, the meeting. The only other thing I need from you all tonight is to approve our Bytown Economic Development Committee charge. I sent you guys all a copy of that with red strike throughs and whatnot. Are there any questions for me on that? They're all formality changes, and then we had to make an additional change because we were instructed that our public meeting law, or we were violating public meeting law by our quorum standards.
Make a motion that we approve the Bytown Economic Development Committee charge changes.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. We have the consent agenda. We need to approve the minutes of June 6th, 8th, and 12th. Okay, so
Is everybody here for all of them?
So June,
Did you get all that?
no. The ones with the planning commission, we had 2 absentees. We had Scott and John, Joe were not there.
And then. June 12th.
June 12th.
Okay, so I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 12th.
Second.
Oh, Dan, yeah, right.
Any corrections or changes?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we have the
I make a motion to approve the minutes of June 6th and 8th.
Second.
Second by Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we have the warrants of June 10th for $107,810.95.
I make a motion to approve the warrants for June 10th for $107,810.95.
All in favor? Aye. We have FYIs. Pet photos in the park fundraiser on June 24th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We have the.
Oh, can I just say something?
Yes.
So this is something I'm involved with.
I love art space.
I love art spaces. I mean, nonprofit art organization that we're trying to get going in the valley. So this is a fundraiser for them, and also to benefit from Young County Humane Society, by bringing pet food donations. At this point, we don't have a lot of people signed up, so if you know somebody who's interested, please reach out to me.
Well, I guess you can take them to the gazebo if it's raining, right?
Yeah, I know, so I think it is coming, but anyway, so.
Okay, thank you to that. Sounds like a great.
Bring you down.
Bring you down. Can you bring
Or
your
your
dog
dog,
or your?
rabbit, or who wants to have it here, right?
I think we're doing good. First summer concert is on Sunday, June 25th at 2 p.m. Woo-hoo, here we go. Planning Commission meets on June 26th at 6:30 p.m. and open mic night is next Wednesday, June 28th at 6 p.m. Right. Any liaison reports?
No.
No. We need an executive session for personnel to discuss Our motion, we're going to executive session at 8:38 p.m. All in favor?
I guess.
Thank you all. Thank you. Well, we had some time there at the end.
Yeah, there you go.
We did.